Brenda, Meller, at LinkedIn Live. I call this series Social Media Pie, where I bring on inspiring people to inform and educate you. And my very special guest this morning is Carla Essen. Hey, Carla, how are you doing today?
Hi, Brenda. I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Likewise, it's going to be a great conversation. And I want to make sure the live stream is working. It's not coming up on my page yet. So I want to ask the folks in the audience, if you're watching this live right now, whether you're watching it on Facebook, LinkedIn, or on YouTube, I have to think of the three networks, could you drop us a comment and just say hello? Let us know where you're watching from. This is kind of the equivalent, Carla, in the pre-pandemic days of like when we would tap on our microphone and say, can you guys hear me in the back? Like it was kind of like the way of testing it out. And the live streams, I love working on StreamYard, but sometimes I've noticed it hiccups. And every now and again, the stream doesn't push out to LinkedIn. So when I see the comments coming in from our audience, I know that the stream is working. John, thank you, my friend. John has just commented and he's watching us from Texas. So guys, I want to encourage you to continue to drop your comments in as we get the conversation started this morning. And we're going to be having a great conversation with Carla today about market research and specifically what's the difference between qual and quant and why should you care? Before we get into that conversation, a little bit about how I know Carla. We crossed paths, I think initially virtually or maybe in person. I can't recall, but Together Digital is a national organization we both belong to. And in our pre-call, I was asking Carla, I'm like, have we ever actually met at a conference? And I think, Carla, you said that you attended my LinkedIn workshop at one of the conferences, right?
Yeah. Amazing. Great content, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And it was funny. I was telling Carla that it was the last day of the conference and it was like the last breakout session. And I was in a panic because I'm like, nobody's going to attend this. Everybody's going to be going home. So the whole conference, I was like talking to people. I'm like, you got to come check out my workshop. And it was it was in like a breakout side room and it was packed, standing room only. And it was just absolutely amazing energy in the room. So I'm glad to have had the chance to, be there in the room with you in person. And since then we were on, I think, a board call and I started poking around in your profile. I'm like, oh, this is a girl after my own heart. Market research is part of my background. I'm like, maybe it might be a fun conversation to talk about market research today. So with that said, Carla, for those folks who don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about ourselves and then we'll jump about yourself, I should say, and then we'll jump into the conversation today.
Yeah, sure. So first off, I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I work for a company called Market Vision Research. We are a custom research house, which means that we are small enough to have the boutique capabilities of designing a research plan for our customers from scratch, but we have the resources and scalability to be, I guess, more like a full service, bigger organization. So what I do in my role is I'm a vice president of our qualitative division. I basically help clients understand consumer thoughts and behavior so that the business decisions they're making are always rooted in the voice of the customer. So that they're not going off. I always use the term like, the engineers are like, if we build it, they will come.
Right.
They won't always come. So it's important to make sure that whatever you're designing or the product or service you're putting out is vetted against those who are going to use it. So
that's awesome.
In a nutshell, that's what I do.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you're really passionate. You got a lot of knowledge in the area. And you reminded me as you were talking, I remember when I first went to business school, I went to Central Michigan University and I wanted to study business. And I remember taking a psychology class because you have to take all the general studies. I'm like, wow, this psychology is really fascinating. And in marketing, we cross a lot of different disciplines, and psychology is one of the things that are kind of really behind market research, I think. So let's first start with, let's ask the question, because there might be some folks watching that are like, are they talking about math this morning? Because we see words like qual and quant. I mean, first of all, tell us what does that mean? What is the word qual and what's quant and what does that mean, first of all?
Sure. Yeah. So there's two camps in market research, pretty much. The quantitative is really the what, and it's when you're putting numbers behind something to quantify and measure and kind of determine sizing around any kind of decision or, thought process. The qualitative is more the why. So why are people doing what they're doing? The deeper, insightful nuggets as to consumer behavior, attitudes, perceptions, all of that. So I work on our qualitative side of the business. So I'm more of a qual guru than a quant guru. I understand the people who don't love numbers because that's me. I see a pie chart and I'm kind of like my eyes glaze over sometimes. But
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, the quantitative is if you're trying to determine, I guess, like your potential in a marketplace. So for instance, if you have a new product, let's say, for example, and you want to understand forecasting wise, what could this yield you? Understanding how big your target market is, sizing that, those would all be things you'd undertake with quant. And then understanding, maybe what that target market likes about your product directionally and how they could see themselves using it would be something that you do on the qual side. So,
Gotcha. So surveys, does that fall under qual or quant or both?
yeah. So it's funny because a lot of people do use those words interchangeably, and I hear the word questionnaire a lot.
Yeah.
I know for us in the industry, we typically refer to surveys, questionnaires as really kind of a quant practice. What we call it on the qualitative side is more of a discussion guide. So that's what we use to help us get to those insights. But yeah, so any kind of survey that you would undertake with quant is probably going to be, I would say, at least 200 people responding or above. I mean, you could go into the thousands to really size that and make it quantifiable.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I'm now reminding me of my statistics class too, when they would talk about you want to have enough of a survey sample so that it's statistically valid. And now my head's like, it's lighting up and also spinning at the same. I'm like, I don't want to go there. But I love the qualitative side, and you use the term discussion guide. So, our topic today, I'm going to pop it up on the screen here again. And we're talking today about what is the difference between qual and quant, and why should you care? So I know there's a lot of marketers who are watching this. They might be watching it live. They might be watching it in playback. But why should we care? Because you might say, survey, that's good enough. Or I've talked to a couple customers, I know enough. But why should we care about the difference between those two categories?
Well, I think, there's so much in the marketplace around storytelling and really understanding people's feelings. And so that's where the qualitative piece of things comes in. But at the same time, I know we've all heard a lot about big data. We've got so many more sources of data than ever before. And I think it's important to marry those two so that you're not just going off with this mass amount of numbers, I guess, but you're substantiating that with the whys behind it and understanding really what people are about and the nuances and context of how they're living their lives. So I think it's important that we're taking those two sources of data and we're putting them against each other to really tell an entire story and paint a bigger picture. Does that make sense?
Numbers can tell us a story, but there's depth to that story, right? And I think
Exactly.
maybe the qual pulls that out.
Yeah, the context around it, we can quantify how many people are buying potato chips, in a certain flavor. But do we understand all the usage occasions that they're using them for? Do we understand emotionally how different flavors make them feel, or at what times of the day they're using them to satisfy different needs? So that's where the qualitative pulls in that other piece for us.
As you were talking, different times of day, I'm like, well, salty snacks are good for me in the afternoon, but I'm thinking about the holidays are just around the corner, and I might have the cheesy potatoes where I sprinkle potato chips on the top, and that's dinner time, and now my mouth is watering. But these are things that it's almost like a storytelling type of an approach, and you use the term discussion guide earlier. What's a discussion guide? Some people watching, they're like, oh, I know what that means, but other people are like, discussion guide, what's that? Can you tell us?
Sure, yeah. In qualitative, we interview people, and that can be done in either a one-on-one scenario, just like we're doing today, or it can be done in what's more traditionally thought of as a focus group. So, and there's several other methodologies that we use depending on the client's goals and objectives, but we structure a discussion so that we're not going in just willy-nilly asking random questions, but that we're building on insights. So we'll usually start with some icebreakers just to get people comfortable and acquainted with the topic. And then usually we'll start with a bigger picture and kind of narrow down and funnel into more specifics. So while it may look like it's just a very casual conversation, which is how we hope it feels for the respondents that are in our studies, we actually are catering all of our questions to getting the right answers for our clients, so that when they come out of it, they can take that back to their business objectives and take those insights and really make them actionable.
Awesome. And one thing we talked about, we did like a prep call last week. I always like telling people a little bit of my process here. So we did a prep call, and I'm like, I remember back in my corporate days when we would do market research and we would work with folks. We had a focus group room in our building, and we would bring people in, and I remember going, guys, this discussion guide seems like it's a pretty easy thing. And even facilitating the focus group, like leading them through the questions, it seems like it's a pretty easy thing. I mean, I could do that on my own, right? Or what's the benefit of hiring someone? And I know the answer to the question. That's why I'm asking this. But tell us, couldn't you just do this on your own, or what are the risks or
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I think a very skilled moderator does make it look super easy. And that's a great thing. The reason that I think it's important to hire someone outside of your company to do this kind of work is for twofold, really. Number one, we don't have any bias here. We don't have any vested interest in the outcome of the study. So we are simply talking to these respondents with the goal of truly understanding them. And with that said, we then aren't necessarily biased against the answer. So we're not looking for a certain outcome where it's just human nature. If you're working on a certain product or an initiative and you really want it to work, you might be asking questions that are kind of taking people down that path unintentionally, but it's just something that you do if you have real passion for it and you're working towards it. We, as moderators and an outside vendor, come to the table and can ask all of those questions in a very unbiased way. So we can bring the perspective of also not having as much knowledge. So it's kind of like we can see the forest through the trees. Whereas sometimes I think, product development people or marketing people, they're so into it day to day, that sometimes if they were to ask those questions, it might be phrased in ways that respondents aren't really accustomed to, or, maybe too granular for those discussions. So we can kind of bring that outside perspective. The second thing is that moderators are very trained in asking questions in a way that are not leading. So offering respondents the ability to say positive, to say negative, and to say absolutely nothing at all. We ask questions in a way that allows them a lot of options in terms of how they respond. So I think that's important to get the true read from the respondent, to really understand them and not make them feel like they have to answer in a certain way.
Good point. And you kind of made me think about when you said not leading them to a response. It's kind of like counsel is leading the witness, Your Honor. In a courtroom, when you see a lawyer asking questions in a way that is steering someone towards a desired response. How long has your husband been beating you? Wait a minute, what? In that way. And the judge will intercept in that conversation and, kind of drive it back. And it's almost like if I were to hold out a plate of some white substance to people in a focus group room, as a moderator, I would say, what is this? Describe it to me. If I were a yogurt manufacturer, I might hold it out and go, doesn't this smell delicious, right?
Or maybe how much do you like this?
How much do you like this?
That's another one.
Right. So, and we do this in a way that we're not even thinking it's a biased type of a question, but we're asking it in a way that we're like, doesn't this look delicious? Doesn't it look creamy and smooth? How would you describe it? Creamy and smooth, right? So we're leading people through. And as a moderator, as a market research firm, you're not paid to get certain types of results. You're paid to get honest feedback, right?
Correct. True opinions. And I always tell people that at the beginning of an interview, positive or negative, it's perfectly fine. And I think the other thing that is very important is to reassure respondents, especially if they're in the room with others, that differing opinions are perfectly fine, that, they represent a lot of people that we don't get to speak to. And so if somebody thinks one way and someone else thinks another, that's really good for us to understand, that it doesn't need to be a consensus or an agreement.
Yeah. And I think, really good moderators I've seen too, Carla, they make sure that everybody in the room has a chance to speak and that one person is not dominating conversation to cause that groupthink to occur. Thoughts on that? And, what's your, perspective there?
Yeah, managing the group dynamics, that's a big part of moderating as well. So making sure that everyone has an equal voice and that everyone feels heard, and also acknowledging what each person says, but not necessarily validating that as like, ooh, that's a really good opinion. It's more just like, I really appreciate your contribution. Thank you for sharing that. So
Right. Just noting it without rewarding them or feeling like they're being penalized for sharing that opinion.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm curious with, over the past couple of years, the way that we research people, and especially from a qual perspective, may have changed. Whereas in person focus groups were occurring before, even if they were occurring behind glass and mirrors where we're waving at the people behind, has that shifted? Are you doing more virtual, either Zoom calls or phone calls with what you're doing with researching now?
Yeah, so that's been interesting. Online research has been around for a long time. I got into the industry about 12 years ago. I had a background in pharmaceutical sales. So when I first got into market research, I was working with a lot of surgeons as far as respondents and pharmaceutical medical device as my clients. And just the nature of that business, we often did more in-person work just because we'd have to go to a certain market where we could get a substantial amount of surgeons. So we'd usually be in a big city. Now with Gen Pop, your everyday average consumer like all of us, it was very easy to conduct online work because you can source them from anywhere. Put them on a screen just like this. So I would say that was a bit more of a shift for the healthcare community for us to be doing online work. It's not that we never did it. I think it just was, it was almost easier to just go to a city and execute. But yeah, since COVID began, obviously everything had to shift online, which fortunately, because we've been doing it for so long, we were skilled at. It just required, some pivoting in order to do like focus groups. We didn't do as much online, but now we do them all the time. Probably not as big of a room as we would have in a live setting. So you could usually gather 6 to 8 people in a room. If we do it online, it's usually a little bit smaller. But yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of a shift back to in-person, but I think there will always be an opportunity for online work. And quite honestly, that's been nice in some regards, to see people adopt that because it gives us more reach. It allows us to get to more people. We would have never gone to a small rural town to interview people in a live setting. So now we're doing that. So we're getting people who come from all over the place. So
yeah, interesting.
That's a great byproduct.
Yeah, like one of those byproducts is, like you said, we all shifted in pre-pandemic. We were all like, we can't work virtually. Nobody can work from home. They're not going to be working. And then lo and behold, we all had to work from home. And guess what? We still got our jobs done. And we also figured out ways to be more efficient going through the process. So it sounds like you were doing this before it was cool, right? You were doing the online research before it was really a thing. And you're continuing to do those throughout the pandemic. Are some clients continuing to do virtual versus the in-person, even though they can, or what's kind of happening there?
They are, like you said, I think people are realizing some of the time efficiencies in doing this. But there is still a need, and I think there will always be a need to go out into the field, as we call it. We've done some in-store research for certain clients, retail customers, grocery customers. And it's just really helpful to be able to see them in their natural environment. So when you're talking about shopping habits and practices, to be in a store with a respondent, watching them shop, seeing what they pick up, seeing what they evaluate, there's no replacement for that online. We can do that in a virtual setting for certain types of things. But seeing them in a live environment also brings a lot of value. So I don't see that ever going away.
That sounds interesting. So in that situation, is it a secret shop, or are you accompanying them as they walk throughout the store? I'm curious.
Yeah. I've never personally done secret shopping because I'm on the qualitative side of things. I'm always engaged with the respondent. So yeah, I've done different things. We have a paint manufacturer who has retail stores, and they do work where they're looking at customers shopping in their store, but then also doing intercepts. So, bringing in respondents who necessarily are not recruited for the study, but just walking up to someone in a store and saying, hey, would you talk to me for 10 minutes about your experience today? So all different kinds.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to kind of catch people, because I almost think about, if I were to walk in, I'm just going to say Target, because that's what came in my head when you were saying you're watching my buying behavior, and I'm walking, and you come into the store with me, and you're going to watch what I do and ask questions about it. I would think my behavior might change a little bit, knowing that you're watching. I'm in the makeup aisle, and I'm picking up different products, and I don't want you to feel, I don't want to be judged because of what I'm picking up or not picking up. Does that behavior change, do you find, or do people kind of let their guard down and just kind of go and do their normal shopping?
Yeah, so that's a really good point, Brenda. I think, there is always an element of, is someone potentially going to do something that they wouldn't naturally do? Right. So that's a concern. But I think too, we have ways of combating that, or I would say, like, filling that gap with more organic types of research. So where we'll have people go into a store and do something virtually, like they can send us things off their mobile phone that they're doing, and just talk through it naturally. Versus having someone observe them. Because I agree that can be a little bit of added pressure, or, somebody's looking at me and asking me a bunch of questions. So maybe I'm going to go over and above and beyond what I normally do. But yeah, we have other ways of complementing that so that you get the really natural responses as well. And then when you marry those two together, it gives you a lot of great insight that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Very interesting. And as you're talking, it made me think of the term, is it called ethnographic research? It's when you're seeing, am I using the right term, Carla?
Right. Yeah. That's when you're basically immersed, like I was saying, in their own environment. It doesn't always have to be a store environment. We've even gone into people's homes and just watched them do some kind of thing with some certain product. So for instance, I'm trying to think of a good one. Oh, I did one. This was really interesting, on alcohol.
Yeah.
So we did basically girl parties where we'd say, host a wine night, invite all of your best friends over, and then we would just go and observe and watch how people used different alcoholic beverages, how they served them, what they mixed them with, where they stored them, how they talked about them. So it was very interesting, and it brought the client a lot of interesting insights about how things are being used in the home and for entertaining. So, that's different than, say, going to a restaurant and ordering alcohol. So all different kinds of scenarios.
Yeah. And I have to say, that had to be a fun research project too. I mean, I'm sure you're not drinking wine while you're doing it, but it has to be kind of fun watching people just hanging out socially in doing your job as you're kind of having that. It's that going back to that psychology, to the psychology of human behavior and how we interact with products and services and things like that. It has to be kind of a fun thing, I would imagine too, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very fun job because there's so much variety. I'm doing something different every day, and I'm working on different topics every day, different categories. So yeah, it's funny. I'll kind of digress for a second and tell you a story about my background. So when I got to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was undecided as a major. It took me a few years to figure it out. I thought I maybe wanted to go pre-med, but then I was like, I don't know if I'm really up for that much schooling. Wow. But I always had an interest in healthcare and medicine. And then I took a number of anthropology courses in school, and I loved that, but I never really knew, like, what can I do with anthropology? So I kind of had a specialty in it, but I didn't declare it as a major. I ended up being a communications major, learned a lot about production. I did a little bit of speech comm as well. So all of that said, I had a few different marketing roles right after school. And then I went into pharmaceutical sales, which kind of brought in the medicine side of things. And after about 5 years in pharmaceuticals, I ended up in healthcare market research. So it's funny now because I do so many different types of research, not just healthcare, But I think about the fact that all of those things sort of came together for me, but it wasn't until like 15 years after I got out of school.
Right, that you can connect the dots, right?
Yeah. But it was kind of serendipitous, I think, that all of those things came together, and now I'm doing like exactly what I think I was designed to do. So.
But this wasn't like when you were in college, you weren't like, someday I want to do market research. That wasn't
No. In fact, I find that market research is not necessarily a career that is really, what do I want to say? Like on the
it's not like I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, it's or a market researcher. I mean, if I were to ask my kids, they might understand, but it's not something initially. But speak right now, Carla, to the maybe college students watching this right now that are kind of overwhelmed with like, what do I want to be when I grow up and I have to pick a major? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I do a lot of recruiting at my alma mater at Miami University, and I don't think there may be a market research course or two, but I don't know that it's ever promoted as a career per se. And so when I go and speak back at Miami, it's funny because a couple years ago I had a really amazing candidate come up to me and she said, "Do you guys offer internships? I didn't even know this was like a thing." And I'm like, yeah. So she ended up becoming an intern for us. We've hired her on full time. I think, if one of the things that I notice in marketing programs is that a lot of what gets pushed is like product development or brand marketing, branding in general, agency type of work. But I think if you're someone who really is interested in human behavior, psychology, like you said, anthropology, like me, understanding how people live, this can be a really amazing career. And there's a lot of different paths to go down. So like I said, I'm on the qualitative side, but if you do love numbers and you love crunching things and seeing, trends and patterns in numbers and things like that, there's opportunity there as well. So, and you don't always have to be even a moderator on the qual side. There are lots of, you can be in business development. So you can be selling the research programs into different companies. So
that's awesome. So you said you're a speaker at Miami University. Do you talk about market research, or do you come back as an alumni talking about career paths, or what are your topics?
Yeah, all of the above, actually. Market research, supplementing those programs, the marketing programs. There's a program that I participated in that was entrepreneurial in nature, where we got together with the graphic design teams and the marketing teams. Like I said, I was a communications major, and came up with a whole campaign for a client. And I forget what it's evolved to now. It has a different name at Miami, but supporting those programs as well. So it's really rewarding. I love to kind of give back and, help develop the marketers of the future. Yeah. So, and it's come such a long way. Like there's so much innovation and development in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found like I went back to my alma mater to speak to Central Michigan University. And it's weird, like being back in the classroom, because you can feel yourself being in the student seats, the baggy sweatshirts, you just woke up, you're kind of half awake, got your coffee. And I remember what that feeling was. And then this grown-up comes in the front of the class in to speak. And I remember there were certain guest speakers that would come in and I was like sleepy, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. And then I would kind of sit up and start asking questions. And you never know when a guest speaker, to your exact story about your intern, could end up being your potential future employer. So I always tell people, ask questions. For sure. And since I'm on the start of asking questions, I want to ask you guys to drop your questions in now, because we're going to start shifting into some Q&A for Carla here. And not only does this technique work in the classroom, but this works in live videos as well. It brings visibility to you as the participant, the person who's watching the video, because we're going to call out your name, pull your name up on screen. And also, it makes me feel good as the host for the series, and it makes Carla feel good that people are paying attention and they have questions. So don't be shy. Drop your questions or comments in below. I'm vamping a little bit, Carla, and I told you this. There's about a 30-second delay from the time that I say, drop your questions below. And then from that point until the time people start typing in, there's probably another 30 seconds to 1 minute. So I'm buying a little bit of time. Yeah. We're doing this here right now. But let's start to shift into Q&A, and let's see others who might be joining us here this morning as well. Let's see. We've got folks from all over joining us here. I see Deborah from earlier, was joining us from Prussia. We've got Deanna. Hello, Deanna from Chicago. Stacy coming in from Venice, Florida. Alma coming from Toronto. So we're international. We also got Patrick coming from Kenya. So great to see you. And I think you know Shauna. She's a fellow Together Digital member.
Hi, Shauna.
Yeah. So Shauna is also in the marketing world too. And anytime I get the chance to
my gosh, she's an RN. I did not know that.
Yeah, she's actually similar to you, you know, had a career pivot, I think, and then moved into, she's more in like a brand marketing role. I may be mistaken, Shauna, so help me out with that. So Gabe has a question. I'm going to give you this first question. Carla, Gabe is asking, so what questions should I be asking before deciding whether or not to use qual or quant if I'm unsure of the information I need to gather? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Our clients come to us for that sometimes, you know, what should I be doing? What should my approach be? So I guess it kind of depends on where you are in your life cycle. And I'll just give an example. If you're a startup, for instance, let's say you've got a brand new product and you're trying to understand, like, who could your target market even be? I would say you want to start directionally with that. And by that, I mean, you're probably going to want to take on qual first in order to understand who has potential. So let's say you have a hypothesis of maybe 3 types of users of this product. If you do qualitative research, you could bring in, I don't know, maybe say like 20 respondents and ask them about this product just from an appeal standpoint. But also, you know, how do you see yourself using this? In what use cases would you use it? And then you could kind of end that with, do you see anybody else who this might be valuable for? So if that person is interested in it, they might have those tangential types of relationships where they could think of, oh, well, maybe somebody like this would want it. So it will give you more fodder for figuring out who your target market should be. And then you could take that into quant and size it and figure out, okay, this kind of a user has this kind of potential for us, whereas maybe this target would only be this big and refined to look like this, for instance. I mean, obviously, depending on your business objectives, it could go either way. You might need to start with quant and then go to qual to understand those survey responses, right? Because you're going to get something that's kind of like neat and tidy in one little statement, but maybe you don't know the reason behind that. So you could then undertake qualitative to figure out the why. So I think that's the beauty of a company like mine, is that we can really customize it for you and we can partner with you to talk through that whole scenario. What kind of information are you trying to gather right now? What would be most meaningful for you? And a lot of times it's more about you telling us your business objectives, and then we translate that into research objectives. So, okay, you need to make X, Y, Z decision. This is the kind of thing you're going to need to go find out. So we can help you with that. That's, you know, one of the reasons to go to a market research partner and bring them in.
Find an expert. And we talked about this earlier point too. And Sue really liked it that you were talking about the biased response. And it's actually the biased way of asking a question to elicit a certain type of response. So there's so much expertise, I think, sometimes in working with outside experts. Yeah, you could do it yourself, but, you know, Gabe, your earlier question, you could be spinning your wheels and do both. And to Carla's point, you know, I'm not focusing on the right things, but which are, what are your business objectives and how will that research help you to get to your desired outcomes? I want to keep us moving, and thank you, Sue, for joining in on the conversation. Stacy fell in. I just love like geeking out with market researchers like you, Carla, because we can like, and you were certain phrases you were kind of shouting out, you know, even the terms qual and quant. Qual actually it's short for, is it qualitative?
Correct. Yeah.
Quant is short for
quantitative. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, different. We're
the numbers, the what, and the story, the why.
Right.
That's an easy way to kind of break it down.
Yeah. Let's see. We have Mick watching us all the way overseas from Belgium. I think it's afternoon if I'm not mistaken. So good afternoon, Mick. Sue has a question, and it's QX. What does QX mean? Is that like a qualitative question, or do you know what that means? QX?
I think it's just an abbreviation for question, right?
Oh, I just learned something new. Okay, question. So do you think students are better prepared now, Carla, stats and research, ability to apply those factors in different topical areas than maybe in years past? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think students, I think they're really well prepared right now. Like like I said, when I go back and speak, I'm always amazed at how thoughtful and polished students are coming out of school now. Um, I do think that there's opportunity, the big thing in qualitative right now for us is storytelling. It's
Mm,
like, how do you translate data into
yeah.
a story? How do you make that easy to digest across an organization? And especially for senior level executives who don't have the amount of time to really get into all the meat there, how do you make it palatable for them and put it in the context of a story? That's one of the biggest trends that I see today. And so I think for students, that would be the advice I have for them, is really honing in on their skills to take data and take numbers and take, raw information, and then put that into a story, be able to massage that and tell people what it means for them in their business. So really kind of translating that. That's one of the biggest things that I think we all need, and we're all still working on it. But I hear it from clients. I know it's a big desire for them. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but
I love, no, it's a good way. I think you answered the question, then you added something to it, which is, and a lot of times in classes, even K-12, they're trying to teach students, and I have a son and daughter in the K-12 system, and they're trying to teach them how to think more analytically.
yeah,
And at the college level, it's okay, now let's use what you've learned. And I love your approach of like creating it into a story that can make it usable for an executive who's just too busy to weed through a 50-page report, but they need to know at a very high level, what is this telling me? And how does this
right,
impact my business? What do I need to do with
yeah.
it? So, Carl, thank you so much for watching. Sure, I appreciate that you're enjoying the conversation. John has a question. Now, I'm trying a different technique in StreamYard. Thank you to Gabe, by the way, who gave me this technique. I was struggling with long comments, which were almost creating, I called it the Wilson effect, Carla, where they were like covering, like, and we almost had to like peer over the fence. Like, remember in Home Improvement when Wilson had to peer over the fence on long question on asking
Home improvement. Yeah.
right? Yeah, I can't remember. So when we get long questions in StreamYard, it was doing the same thing. And Gabe showed me how to condense using the condensed comment version. So now we've got this comment from John. He's in transportation tech sector, serving trucking companies nationwide, looking to gain insight on fleet telematics and software needs to better serve them. Customers are larger fleets, 400 vehicles or more. Wow. Any suggestions on where to start? I'm going to say you need to talk to Carla. But Carla, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm assuming that John has not undertaken customer research before. I'm just going to assume that. So yeah, I guess I would say define what you're looking to find out and what business decisions you're looking to make. This is so funny because my dad was in the trucking industry.
Yeah.
So kind of relevant to me. But yeah, so what we could do is we can refine what we call the screening criteria to bring in respondents. We can completely screen them for this. So we would go out to people. We have databases. We work with recruiting partners. So we have databases of people that would be in this business, and we could screen them, that you have to have 400 vehicles or more. There could be certain other parameters that you want them to meet, and then we would be able to recruit them into a study. Whether that's qualitative or quantitative, I can't quite determine that just from this question alone.
Right.
But yeah, we could help you with that, and certainly design an entire questionnaire or discussion guide around telematics and software.
Wow,
So,
that's great.
we
So
try.
yeah, I mean, yeah, we're pretty good, Carla, but could we do it all in 25 to 40 minutes? But it, I mean, I think it just shows the depth of knowledge that you have and the approaches that you take with your clients too. And I think even, approaching from the perspective of what are your business objectives and having somebody who's an impartial third party to walk you through that, I think can be helpful. So we're near the end of our time. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to tag on to that for John. A lot of it is trying to determine, is this more exploratory? So are you just trying to get a better sense of your customers? Because we can do that type of research, versus something very specific, like we want to launch XYZ new product, or we're going to develop this new piece of software, and we need to know exactly what it needs to do for our customers. So those two different types of research, from going from maybe really big picture and just foundational learnings, we do that all the time. But we also do very specific decision-making type of research. So we can help with both of those types of things.
Awesome. So we're actually, the hour's kind of flying through here, Carla, and I want to get you back to your day. So as we start to wind down the conversation, I'm going to pull up your LinkedIn profile up on the screen. So I'm doing the piloting, co-piloting thing. So give me just a second to navigate and pull it up on here. I think I've got the right one. There we go. I think that's you, right? Did I get your profile right up on screen?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. And there's your LinkedIn, and I'm going to put your LinkedIn URL at the bottom so that folks, if they wanted to connect with you or learn more, Carla, what's the best way? Is it reaching out to you on LinkedIn? Is it going to your website? What do you prefer?
Definitely. Yeah. LinkedIn is probably the best way. If you were to go to Market Vision's website, that's perfectly fine, but I'm not necessarily the direct contact for that. So yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Also, I would suggest, if anybody has not undertaken research before, to become a respondent on the other side of it is a great way to kind of understand the whole process. So we have what we call community panel, where you can sign up to participate in market research projects. And you could be contacted on a variety of topics. So it could range from a taste test on ice cream to maybe a study on diapers if you're a mom, or even if you're a business owner, to understand, what kind of HR software you're using. So all kinds of different opportunities. If you go to, I'm looking it up right now.
Is it on your website or?
Well, I think so, but it's almost easier to just go to our Instagram handle.
What's your Instagram? I'll pull it up right now as we're talking about this.
Yeah, so it's community_panel.
Community_panel. Okay, Let's see if I got this right.
There it is. Okay. Yes. And if they click on the link, then it should take them to a place to sign up and become part of the database. So
awesome. And I'm going to drop this into the LinkedIn chat as well, so they can sign up to participate in research, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to drop that in the LinkedIn as well. Are people I'm looking at, are they paid? I was going to say compensated, or is it free samples, or how does that work out? But it looks like they're paid for it doesn't look like the site is loading. Let me pull that up on the screen here. So when I go to the website, there's a sign up page on here, and it looks like on here it says get paid $65 cash or more as you walk out the door. That's in person, but I'm imagining it's free samples and things like that too, right?
Yeah. So I think it kind of depends on what kind of study you're participating in. If it's something that's online, or you're completing a questionnaire or survey, you might get paid directly. You might get points that you can accrue for, some kind of cash in of some sort. I know that when we do qualitative interviews in person, you're always walking out with some kind of cash payment. Yeah. So, and it just varies the amount that. Yeah.
But you got to make it worth your time. I mean, we're all good human beings, but you're taking away from my time to do things that I want to do. So having some compensation in place there makes sense. And I love the perspective that you shared of, if you're going to do some research, participate in some from the respondent side, so you can understand what the process is like. Right. That way you're coming in from an educated standpoint, either if it is qualitative or quantitative, you're understanding a little bit about that perspectives. So as we wrap up here today, Carla.
I think I lost Brenda. But anyway, it was nice speaking with everyone. Thanks for joining.
I'm sorry, I clicked the back button on the wrong page. Remember when I said it's hosted on StreamYard, so if it ends for me. So now I'm going to add another thing in my instructions to guess if I accidentally close the StreamYard.
Okay.
Sorry about that hiccup.
No worries.
My comment was, my question for you, Carlos, any final comments on qual or quant to wrap up our conversation here for today?
Yeah, I think just always keep in mind the voice of the customer, because that's who you're really serving at the end of the day. And so bringing in consumer insights into any kind of business decision, you can never go wrong. I guarantee you will always learn something that you didn't realize about your customers. And it's so valuable to be able to serve them in that way.
Awesome. Carla, thank you so much. It was a delight chatting with you and kind of geeking out and talking marketing research. It got me like remembering, a lot of terms that I hadn't thought about before. And I just really find a lot of fascination in the psychology of human behavior and understanding how those decisions can drive really good corporate decisions that can lead to business. So thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
All right, guys. And if you happen to be watching this in playback, still leave a comment below because Carla, I will be sending you the link after. And if there are any questions we didn't get to, or, fellow Together digital friends who might be watching this in playback, we'd love it if you could leave a comment. This will be on LinkedIn, it'll be on YouTube and on Facebook as well. So wherever you're watching it, whenever you're watching it, we'd love it if you could drop a comment below. And do invite Carla to connect with you on LinkedIn. Mention that you watched during the video, and if there's something particularly helpful, we would love that as well. And my final comment for you guys is after you're done watching the video here today, I would love if you could share this video along with your network. So as soon as you're done, go back on the video link. There's a share button. You can click to share and then tell people something that you learned by watching the video for today. It's a great way of being active on LinkedIn. If you haven't posted something in a while, we're giving you the content. All you got to do is click on the share button. Tell people something that you learned. We'll get a notification of that and helps us spread the word. So thank you again, Carla. I'll see you, I'm sure, at another virtual event and maybe at a in-person event sometime in the new year as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, everyone.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you, Carla. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe and stay healthy. And we will see you all on LinkedIn. Have a wonderful week.